What's going on, guys? Welcome to a long overdue video on this channel. It is my Doctor Who DVD collection for 2023. I haven't done a full DVD collection since 2019 that I did the first and only one at this current point in time. I've got way more Doctor Who DVDs since then. I only had like one shelf worth of classic DVDs last time. Now I've got two and a half of classic, and I've almost got every classic episode that is currently available as of recording this. The only ones I don't have are the Underwater Menace, the Abominable Snowman, and Sharda. Those are the only ones that I don't have. And I mean, I'm hoping more will be released later on, but yeah, we're gonna just get straight into this today. So the first top shelf is just all the slip covers for the box sets of the classic series. So I'm not going to go over all those, but those are all the box sets there, a whole shelf full of them. So, but they just contain episodes within all these shelves. So let's get started right at the beginning with An Unearthly Child, the first ever Doctor Who episode. Episode 1 is really good. The rest of it is a little bit boring, a little bit slow, but all in all, it's a decent start to the series. And like I said, episode 1 especially is amazing. It's pretty much perfection. The Daleks, the first ever Dalek story, of course, I think it's really good. Yes, it does drag quite a lot in the middle, but as an introduction to the Daleks, it's the first ever just alien story of any kind, actually. So yeah, I think it's decent. The Edge of Destruction is just a little two-part story with not a whole lot to it, but it's fine enough. The Keys of Marinus I have not seen yet. There are quite a few episodes that I haven't watched yet, so I won't really have anything to say on those ones, but yeah, that is the first of those. The Aztecs is actually pretty good. I really enjoyed this one. Good historical episode. Yeah. The Sensorites is okay. It's actually decent. There's definitely good episodes in there, but yeah, like a lot of the 60s era, and especially the first Doctor's era, it is quite slow in the middle. The Reign of Terror, haven't seen that one yet. Planet of Giants, I recently reviewed this one. It's okay. It's nothing special in my opinion. Only 3 parts long. But it was supposed to be a 4-part, but it was kind of cut down. That is evident in watching it. And yeah, it's not quite what I was hoping it was going to be, but it's fine. The Dalek Invasion of Earth, I've said this before, I think it's a bit overrated personally. It was the first Dalek story of the 60s that I watched. It was only the first Doctor story that I watched as well, I think, and the third black and white story in general that I watched. So I maybe have to go back and rewatch it, but personally, I just found this one quite slow, in some ways slower than the Daleks, and I do prefer the Daleks to Dalek Invasion of Earth. But maybe I need to give it another watch. The Rescue, this was the first Doctor story that I watched, and yeah, it's just a little 2-parter. It's pretty good. Can't get this one out. The Romans, I really like. It's quite funny. It's a little bit different to a lot of other stories in this era, and maybe it doesn't, depict the Romans the best, but it's just a fun story. I really enjoy it. The Web Planet, haven't seen yet. The Space Museum, I think is actually decent. It's a decent little story, bit of a lead up to the next episode, but yeah, especially episode 1, very enjoyable. The Chase is decent again. Doesn't do the best work with the Daleks. They come off as very stupid in this story, but it's enjoyable for a little bit of a laugh. The Time Meddler, another very good story. Really enjoy this one. Great stuff with the meddling monk. Just really good all round. Galaxy 4, which I have not seen. Same goes for the Ark, haven't seen that one yet either. The Gunfighters is not great in my opinion, probably my least favourite Hartnell so far. Just don't really like the tone of the episode. It's very different tone-wise to anything else in this era. You know, even, I mean, it's a musical, it's got comedy elements. The Romans had comedy elements, but I think they worked. I think it is just the musicalness nature of this that for me doesn't really work. The War Machines, which I really enjoy. It's probably actually my favorite Hartnell that I've watched so far. Really like this one. Actually feels a little bit more like a second or a third Doctor story. I think that's maybe why I like it quite a lot, because the general gist of the first Doctor era is, you know, the feel of it. It's not my favorite era. I much prefer the second, third Doctor sort of feel, and this has that feel. So yeah, really enjoy this one. And then finally for the first Doctor, we have the 10th Planet, which is another really good story. Introduction to the Cybermen, they're pretty good here. Nice little base under siege, so it kind of feels like a second Doctor story once again. Bit unfortunate that the first Doctor isn't in episode 3 at all, but yeah, all in all, pretty good. We kick off the Patrick Troughton second Doctor era with the Power of the Daleks, which is a very good introduction to this Doctor. Fully animated this one because most of it is lost, but yeah, really enjoy this one. The Moon Base, which is the first second Doctor story I ever saw, and for that I have a lot of nostalgia from it. For it. It's probably my favorite Troughton at the moment as well. Maybe, like I said, because of nostalgia, because it's not one that, you know, when people think Cyberman stories, it's not the first or probably even the second one that people think about with Patrick Troughton's era. But for me, I really love it. The Macra Terror, which is decent enough, another fully animated story. It's pretty good, nothing special though. The Faceless Ones, which I haven't seen. The Evil of the Daleks, which I haven't seen, but I really want to watch this one. It's actually my most recent classic episode, along with Galaxy 4. I got these two at the same time, and I really want to watch this one just because, you know, it's another Dalek story. I really want to watch the Dalek ones especially. Maybe then I can do a ranking of all the Dalek stories, because the only one I technically wouldn't have seen then would be the Daleks Master Plan, which isn't available, and I think it could be quite a while until that one becomes available on animation, if ever. So yeah, really looking forward to watching this one. The Tomb of the Cybermen, which is good. It's a good story. I think it's a little bit overrated personally. I don't like it anywhere near as much as I like the Moon Base. There's definitely some stuff in there that I don't love, but it's still good. The Ice Warriors is decent. Nothing special, but pretty decent. The Enemy of the World is magnificent. Great episode. Patrick Troughton playing both the Doctor and Salamander. Great stuff. You know, playing the good guy and the villain is really awesome. It's a 6-part story, but it honestly flies by. It doesn't even have any aliens or monsters in it, but it's just a really good story. The Web of Fear, which is another really good story. Yeah, it's a shame that one of the parts is not available, and it's a telesnap reconstruction on this one, because this is the original release. I haven't got the special edition that came out later on, which I believe has that one telesnap episode animated. A little bit annoyed that they didn't just do that originally. You know, it was one episode. They could have just animated it originally, but oh well, I guess they just wanted to get it out after finding all the other episodes along with Enemy of the World. But yeah, this is still a very good episode. Fury from the Deep, which I haven't seen. The Dominators, which isn't great. Yeah, not the best of the Troughton era. The Mind Dropper, which is another one that I really love that I don't really hear talked about a whole lot. This one, very fantasy, very exciting, very different. Just a really enjoyable episode. The Invasion, another Cyberman story, the last Cyberman story of Troughton's era, and it's a very good one. A little bit long, 8 parts long, this one. And the Cybermen don't really come into it until the halfway point, but this guy, Tobias Vaughan, he's a great villain before the Cybermen rock up, so yeah, it's a pretty good one. It's actually a really good one, that's undermining it a little bit. The Crotons, probably my least favourite Troughton that I've watched so far. From what I've heard, more people seem to dislike the Dominators than the Crotons. For me, they're both pretty weak. They're definitely the weakest of this era that I've seen. but I like the Crotons a little bit less, personally. The Seeds of Death is very good. Definitely the better of the two Ice Warrior stories. And then finally for Troughton, we have the War Games, the 10-part epic, which honestly doesn't feel like 10 parts. It flies by. I've only watched it the once as of so far, in 2 lots of 5. So I watched 5 episodes one day, 5 episodes the next day, and it's a really, really good story. Going on to Jon Pertwee, the Third Doctor, with Spearhead from Space, an absolute classic. Love this episode. Really, really good. Great start to this new Doctor, this whole new era. Colour in Doctor Who. It's really good. And the Silurians is, for me, the weakest of Season 7. Maybe controversially, but yeah, I find out of all the stories, Spearhead's only 4 parts, but then Silurians, Ambassador's Death, and Inferno are all 7-parters. For me, out of those 3, this one definitely drags the most. I just find it, a little bit too slow, but it's still good. The Ambassadors of Death, which I believe is most people's least favourite from Season 7. For me, I think it's better than Silurians, but it's not better than the other 2. Very good story, though. And then Inferno, which is another masterpiece. Amazing story. Parallel universe. Just done really well. I believe the first time it was done in Doctor Who. Just a brilliant story. Terror of the Autons, not as good as Spearhead from Space. It's still fine. The Master's introduction is great. Joe's introduction is great. But yeah, I think the Autons themselves are not good compared to what they were before. The Mind of Evil, another very good episode. Really enjoyed this one. Awesome stuff. Quite a lot of the Doctor and Joe getting captured, which seems to be a bit of a theme in Jon Pertwee's era. But yeah, a very good episode though. The Claws of Axos is fine. Out of the whole... I probably do prefer this to Terror of the Autons actually, but yeah, it's not... It's decent. It's still a decent story, but it's nothing too special. Colony in Space, I think quite underrated. Very good story, very enjoyable. And then finally for Season 8 is The Daemons, which I have not seen yet. On to Season 9. Day of the Daleks is alright. I don't think Jon Pertwee has the best Dalek stories. This is... out of his 3, this is probably the one in the middle for me. This and another one are very close, and then there's one that I do think is substantially better, but not a whole lot better. But yeah, this is fine. Curse of Peladon, I have not seen. The Sea Devils, I really like. Personally, I prefer this to Doctor Who and the Silurians. I just think the Sea Devils are done better here than the Silurians. The episode, the story doesn't drag like the other one does. The stuff with the Master's really good as well. Really enjoy this one. The Mutants, which I haven't seen, and the Time Monster, which I also haven't seen. So yeah, I've only seen 2 episodes from Season 9, so got a bit of catching up to do there. On to Season 10 though, a season that I have seen all of. Starting with The Three Doctors. It's very good. Yeah, I think it's maybe a little bit overrated, but I still really enjoy it. For being the first multi-Doctor story, it's very good. Carnival of Monsters, I think a story that is actually quite underrated. Doesn't really get talked about a whole lot. The sun is in a horrible spot there. Yeah, I think this episode gets really overlooked. It's very enjoyable. Frontier in Space, personally my least favourite of the series. This is probably the worst, at least from what I've seen so far, example of the Doctor and Joe just getting captured all the time. It just constantly happens in this one. It is, of course, Roger Delgado's final episode as the Master, but wasn't meant to be, but ended up unfortunately being that way due to his death. But yeah, it's fine. It's nothing special in my opinion. Then we've got Planet of the Daleks, which for me is my favourite of the Jon Pertwee Dalek stories. I think this one is considerably better than the other 2. possibly also because I've seen it the most times. I've only seen Day and Death once each. I've seen this one probably 2 or 3 times. Yeah, I think it's pretty good. It's nothing amazing, definitely not the best Dalek stories in this era, but it's a good episode. And then finally, for season 10, we have The Green Death, which is my favourite Jon Pertwee, possibly my favourite classic story. I really love The Green Death. It's very much nostalgia based. I remember watching this one with my uncle way back when I was a kid, and yeah, on rewatch, it's still amazing. I love it. Final season for Jon Pertwee, season 11, starts with The Time Warrior, which is another classic, great episode. First episode for Sarah Jane, first episode for the Sontarans, really good. Invasion of the Dinosaurs, another pretty good episode actually. The dinosaurs don't look great, but when you kind of, push that aside, it's still pretty good. Quite slow in the middle, again, being a 6-parter, but yeah, it's a good episode. Death to the Daleks, yeah, this is probably my least favorite Dalek story. Oh, I can't quite remember now if this or Day is my least favorite. They're pretty much on top of each other, to be honest, with how I feel about them, but yeah, it's okay. And then finally on this shelf we have The Monster of Peladon, which I have not seen. Alright, we're on to shelf number 2, starting off with Jon Pertwee's final story, Planet of the Spiders, which for me is my least favourite of Jon Pertwee's that I've seen so far. I think I have got a few of his weaker stories left to watch, but yeah, this for me, it's okay, but the spiders just aren't great. We start Tom Baker's era, with Robots, which is, I just bumped my bookshelf, which is fine. It's good. It's good. Wasn't quite as good as I remembered it being when I rewatched it, but it's okay. The Ark in Space, very good story, really enjoyable. Yeah, not really much else to say. Sontaran Experiment, a nice little 2-parter with the Sontarans, very enjoyable. Genesis of the Daleks, I mean, it's an absolute classic, isn't it? You can't really say otherwise. It's just really, really good. The Daleks aren't in it as much as you maybe would think, but it's a great episode. Revenge of the Cybermen, I don't think it's awful, actually. A lot of people have a very strong opinion about this story, but yeah, for me, it's the weakest of this season, but it's not awful. Terror of the Zygons, very good, maybe a little bit overrated in my personal opinion, but yeah, very good episode. Planet of Evil, really good, enjoyable. Yeah, one that I hadn't heard a whole lot about, but enjoyed it when I watched it. Periods of Mars, an absolute classic. It's amazing. Another fairly nostalgia-filled episode for me. Really enjoyable. Great villain in Sutek. The Android Invasion, which I have not seen. The Brain of Morbius, which is good. A little bit overrated, although I think I've said this before. It used to be really overrated, and now most people consider it overrated, so it's not really overrated anymore, but it's still good. The Seeds of Doom, really, really good episode. I love this one. Went into this one not knowing a whole lot about it, and really enjoyed it. The Mask of Mandragora, haven't seen. The Hand of Fear, yeah, it's good in the regard that, Sarah Jane's final story, very emotional stuff there. The general premise is okay, but yeah, there's a lot going on here that I don't love. So it's not great, but it's not awful. The Deadly Assassin, another classic, great episode. Of course, the Doctor and the Master, no companion in this story, really cool. On Gallifrey, awesome. The Face of Evil is actually really good. Wasn't expecting a whole lot from this one, but Leela's first story, and actually very enjoyable. The Robots of Death, I love this story. I think it is generally considered a classic anyway, but it's another fairly nostalgia-filled episode for me, and it's probably my favourite Tom Baker. I just love the Vok robots. I love the atmosphere of the story. It's just really good. The Talons of Weng Chiang, another really good story. Maybe not the best when you look back on it now, with some of the themes and things that it does, but just as a general story, it's really good. Horror of Fangrock, another really good story. The Rootons don't look great, but other than that, it's very enjoyable. The Invisible Enemy, first episode for K9, and yeah, it's pretty decent. It's nothing special, but it's a decent story. Image of the Fendar, which I haven't seen. Sunmakers, which I haven't seen. And Underworld, which I haven't seen. The Invasion of Time, for me, the first big disappointment, well, so far out of the ones that I've watched. I really don't like Invasion of Time. I've only watched it the once, and I didn't like it. I didn't really buy Leela leaving for, the guy on Gallifrey. It just felt very forced to me. I didn't like how the Sontarans just kind of rocked up halfway through, and it was pretty much just a completely different story. Like, this could have been, I think it's a 6-parter, isn't it? So it honestly could have just been like 2-3-parters. They were completely different stories. They didn't really have anything to do with each other. And yeah, I just kind of felt myself getting quite bored in this one. Then we're on to the Key to Time series, which I haven't watched any of these episodes yet, so I don't really have anything to say. So the Ribos Operation, the Pirate Planet, the Seeds of Blood, the Androids of Tara, the Power of Kroll, and the Armageddon Factor. Yeah, so I haven't seen the Key to Time at all, so I can't comment on it. Then we go into season 17, Destiny of the Daleks. It's not great. Definitely one of the weaker Dalek stories of the classic era. Yeah, especially when you compare it to Genesis that came before it. City of Death, which is a very good story, I think is maybe a little bit overrated personally. I think I need to watch it again because everybody raves about this story, but I don't know, I watched it and I wasn't really feeling it. I'm trying to sit down. Yeah, it's good, but it's not quite a classic that I think a lot of people think it is. Creature from the Pit with the infamous scene that I'm not even going to talk about. Yeah, I haven't seen it though. Nightmare of Eden, which I actually think is decent. I think this is a reasonably good story. A little bit silly, but it was an enjoyable watch, if anything. The Horns of Naimon is not great. It's fairly substandard. Yeah, the Naimon just are a bit of a weird villain. I don't like the main guy, this guy in the middle of the shot there. He's very camp with the way he performs, and yeah, it's a bit of a mess. The Leisure Hive, which I haven't seen. Meglos, which I also didn't love. Wasn't a massive fan of this one either. Full Circle, which I also didn't really like. We're kind of getting to the episodes now. Season 18, I don't love season 18. I know that it's another one of those series that seems to have very split opinions. Some people love it, some people really don't like it. From what I've seen, and I've seen everything but The Leisure Hive, which I haven't heard good things about, yeah, it's kind of a tale of two halves. It's not the best, because after you go through what I imagine is 3 not great episodes, you then get into, I'd say, 3 decent episodes. Starting with State of Decay, which I actually think is pretty good. Vampire-esque story. Once again, a little bit camp at times with some of the characters and some of the things going on, but it's enjoyable. Warrior's Gate, which for me is the standout of the season. I don't get people talking about this one a lot. It's quite complex, quite complicated, but I've only watched it once and I kind of got my head around it and really enjoyed it. And then The Keeper of Traken, which is another really good episode in my opinion. Penultimate story for Tom Baker. Yeah, really good stuff. And then we finished Tom Baker's era off. So after like 3 poor episodes, 3 pretty good episodes, we kind of finish somewhere in the middle for me with Legopolis. I don't think it's quite the end that Tom Baker's Doctor deserved. It's a little bit drab at points, but it's fine. We start off Peter Davison's era with Castrovalva, another one very similar to Logopolis actually for me. It's fine, but nothing amazing. Similar can be said about Force of Doomsday. Interesting premise, some interesting things going on, but ultimately just doesn't quite capture me too much. It's fine. Kinder, which is pretty decent. I do like Kinder a reasonable amount. The Visitation, which is amazing. I really like The Visitation. Definitely one of Peter Davison's best. Very good story, great setting, interesting villain, just good stuff going on. Black Orchid, which I have not seen. Earthshock, another classic, really good story. Cybermen are great. Great cliffhanger for episode 1 if you didn't know that there was Cybermen, although there is a Cyberman on the front cover. I guess back in the day though, when this was first aired, that would have been a big cliffhanger. But yeah, really good. I'm gonna have to stand up again here because we're getting to the end of this shelf. And then we've got Time Flight, which I have not seen. Arc of Infinity, which I have not seen. Snake Dance, Snake Dance, however you want to say it, which I actually don't mind. I've heard a lot of people say that they quite substantially prefer Kinder to Snake Dance. For me, they're fairly on level with each other. I think I actually slightly prefer Snake Dance, actually, but yeah, I don't know. It's difficult between those two. Mordrin Undead, which I actually really like. Great reintroduction to the Brigadier. Turlough's first episode as well, and he's kind of the bad guy here. Yeah, interesting stuff. Terminus, which I really don't like. Terminus is not an enjoyable story for me. It's Nissa's final episode, but yeah, it's just not good. It's just not very good. Enlightenment, which I actually was quite pleasantly surprised by. I thought this one was very enjoyable. Really good effects and stuff in there as well, although I think I did watch the kind of original broadcast version, not the updated effects, and it was pretty decent. Although I think the updated effects for this one are really good. The King's Demons, which is not great. Again, it's not awful. It's only a 2-parter as well, so it's not like you're sitting there for ages watching it, but it's definitely not the best. The Five Doctors, I mean, personally for me, it's a brilliant story. I guess plot-wise, it's not the most amazing. It's very unfortunate that we don't really have Tom Baker in the story at all. And, I mean, William Hartnell isn't in it because I'm not sure he'd already died or if he was just really sick by this point. But Richard Hurndall plays the first Doctor, and he's alright, but it's not the same. But all in all, this is a massive nostalgia story once again, and I just really enjoy it. It's probably the classic story that I've seen the most as well. No, it's definitely the classic story I've seen the most. Warriors of the Deep. Yeah, Warriors of the Deep isn't great. The general premise of the plot is fine. It's fairly standard. And then put with that some terrible effects, and you've got yourself a stinker. The Awakening, I believe it's a 2-parter. I haven't seen it yet. And finally on this shelf is Frontios, which is actually really quite good. I did quite enjoy this one. Alright, we're on the third and final shelf. We're going to move some stuff over at the top here because I'm running out of room for my DVDs and I've got to start putting them on top. So we start here with the Resurrection of the Daleks, the 5th Doctor's Dalek story. Really good, quite violent, but a very enjoyable story. Planet of Fire, which I actually think is pretty good as well. Definitely the better of the 2 Chameleon Tales stories. Pretty decent. And then the Keys of Marinus to finish off Peter Davison's era. It's probably the best of his era. Really good story, really good creepy villain, and definitely the best performance by Peter Davison as well. Then we start the 6th Doctor's era with the Twin Dilemma, which is not good. It's not good. It's a pretty bad story. Not really much else to say about that. Attack of the Cybermen is decent. It's a decent story. It's nothing amazing, but it's fine. Once again, quite violent, this one. But yeah, it's fine. Vengeance on Varos, definitely my favourite of the Colin Baker Sixth Doctor era. It has a really interesting feel about it. Once again, very dark, especially the Doctor, you know, killing someone, pushing someone in an acid bath. That's pretty violent and not very Doctor-like, but just as a general viewing experience, it's very good. The Mark of the Rani, I have not seen. The Two Doctors is okay. It's the weakest of the multi-Doctor stories, definitely. It's only really good because it's a multi-Doctor story, to be honest. The Sontarans aren't great. Yeah, it's one of those that if it wasn't a multi-Doctor story, I think it would be quite badly rated. But it's okay. Time Lash, haven't seen. And Revelation of the Daleks, I really think I've got to rewatch this one because people rave about this episode and say they really love it. I didn't really like it when I watched it. It was probably my least favourite Dalek story. Maybe it might be better than Destiny of the Daleks, but yeah, I don't know what it was. I can't really remember now. It's a few years since I watched it, but I really didn't love this one when I did the review on it. So yeah, don't know what I'm missing out on there. Then we go on to Trial of a Time Lord with the Mysterious Planet. Weakest of the series for me. It's not great, but it's not awful. Mind Warp, a little bit of a step up, a bit better. Of course, you've got like Syl on that again from Vengeance on Varos, but it's no Vengeance on Varos. Terror of the Vervoids, which is actually pretty good. Definitely a step up from the previous two. And then The Ultimate Foe, which is only 2 parts long and is just the finale to Trial of a Time Lord. And it's probably the best for that. It kind of wraps everything up, and yeah, it's pretty good. Then we get on to Sylvester McCoy, the 7th Doctor, with Time and the Rani, another terrible, terrible First Doctor's story. Honestly, I actually think I prefer the Twin Dilemma over this. I really dislike Time and the Rani. It just feels super hammy and yeah, not enjoyable. Paradise Towers is actually probably my favourite of season 24. Yeah, it's very silly again, much like this whole season, but I quite like it here. Delta and the Bannerman I have seen before, but a long time ago, and I haven't got around to rewatching it again for a review, if I can speak. So I don't really remember anything about it. And then Dragonfire, which I don't love. I don't like the villain particularly much. And yeah, it's the introduction of Ace, but that's about it. Remembrance of the Daleks, the best, possibly the best Dalek story in the classic era, to be honest. I think I prefer this over Genesis. Love this story. It's so good. Great anniversary story. And yeah, it's a big step up from season 24 in my opinion. Let's move these over as we then get to, where are we up to? The Happiness Patrol, which I think is decent. It's decent enough. It is very silly again. It's kind of gone down the silly route once more, but it works a bit better here when you've got, you know, a monster made of licorice all sorts. I think silly makes a bit more sense. It works a bit better. Silver Nemesis, on the other hand, I don't think works. I don't like this story. No, I think it's definitely the weakest Cyberman story in the classic era. It's just, yeah, a lot of stuff I don't like about that. The Greatest Show in the Galaxy is very good story, very fun, interesting, good. Battlefield, another really good story. The Brigadier's back once again. The Doctor is Merlin, apparently, in this story. You've got this dude and this person, Morgana, is it? I can't remember. Yeah, really good story. Ghostlight, which I have not seen yet. The Curse of Fenrir, which is another real classic story from the Seventh Doctor. Great episode, great atmosphere, love this one. And then the final episode from the classic series, Survival, which is another pretty good story. It's not my favourite in the world, but it's a good end to this series, and yeah, pretty decent. Then of course we've got the TV movie with Paul McGann, the Eighth Doctor, which is not great, but Paul McGann pretty much makes up for it. The Master's terrible. Grace is fine. It's very Americanized, the whole thing, but yeah, it's alright. And then we're on to the new series. So I'm just going to go through these by series mostly, because most of them are series box sets. So I won't talk about individual episodes, but we'll get started with Series 1. Great series. It's when I think I'd watched some classic episodes before watching this, but when I first properly, started into watching Doctor Who, like when it was coming out, it was with Series 1, and yeah, it's great. Series 2, definitely the weakest of the RTD era, but still really good. Introduction to my favourite Doctor, the 10th Doctor, David Tennant. Yeah. Series 3, another really good series for me. The RTD era is my favourite era of the show, and like I said, the 10th Doctor is my favourite Doctor. So, yeah, Series 3 is not quite my favourite series, but it's up there. Then we have my favourite series, Series 4. Love this. Favourite Doctor, favourite companion, the best selection of episodes. I don't think there is a bad episode here. There are weaker episodes, but there is, in my opinion, not a bad episode in Series 4. I love it. Then we've got the specials, which are fine. You've got the absolute masterpiece of The Waters of Mars in there. The Next Doctor I actually really like a lot more than I think a lot of other people do. Planet of the Dead is definitely the weakest, and then The End of Time is not great either. It's okay, but yeah. I think part 2 that I prefer? One of the parts I prefer a lot more to the other part. I can't quite remember which one, but yeah, it's fine. Series 5 is a very good series, definitely Matt Smith's best series for me. Great selection of episodes, a few duds, but altogether pretty good. Series 6 starts going downhill a little bit, but it's not terrible. Let's Kill Hitler is definitely the big no-no for me, and The Wedding of River Song, but there's some good stuff in here. Series 7, not good series. The weakest of Stephen Moffat for sure, and Matt Smith. Yeah, I think just splitting the series in half like it did just didn't do it any justices, and it doesn't really have any like classic 10 out of 10 stories for me, and it's probably the first series that does that in the new series. So yeah. The Day of the Doctor, amazing. It's just really good. It's got David Tennant in it, so I love it. John Hurt's great as well. Would have loved to see like Paul McGann or Christopher Eccleston in that role, but it's still good anyway. And yeah, really enjoyable. The Time of the Doctor, yeah, it's not the best in my opinion. It's not awful, but it's not the best. We get on to Peter Capaldi, Series 8, pretty good series, a little bit all over the place, but mostly enjoyable. Series 9, my least favourite of Capaldi's series. It's all made up of pretty much all two-parters. I don't think that quite works, and yeah, some of the two-parters I really don't enjoy. There is some good stuff there too, though. Series 10, probably my favourite, well, it is my favourite Capaldi, and probably my favourite Stephen Moffat. It's very close between this and Series 5 for me, but in my most recent Series 1 to 13 ranking, I did put this ahead of Series 5. I think the year before, oh, well, not the year before, the time that I did that ranking before, I had Series 5 above Series 10, so it kind of switches around a bit, but yeah, it is a good series. Twice Upon a Time, it's not great. Don't love it. Yeah, just not a good final Doctor story in my opinion. Move some more stuff over, and then we get to Series 11, which is not great. Yeah, not the biggest fan of the Jodie era as a whole, and Series 11 is not the weakest, but not the best. Series 12, for me, the best series of Jodie's era. I still don't love any of Jodie's era, like series-wise. There's the odd episode that's good, but it's not a standout era for me. Series 2 is definitely the best. The Timeless Children arc lets it down a bit, although it doesn't bother me as much as I thought it would, that whole arc, compared to, like, you know, how much Hellbent bothers me. Timeless Children doesn't actually bother me. It does bother me, but it doesn't bother me super much. But yeah, it's definitely the best series episode-wise. And the fact that it's got a story arc, unlike Series 11. Revolution of the Daleks is pretty good. Probably my favorite of the Jodie Dalek stories. Series 13, Flux, is my least favorite series of New Who. It's only 6 episodes long. I don't really like the story arc. It's just not done very well. Sorry. Eve of the Daleks and Legend of the Sea Devils, a pretty meh DVD release, this one. Because I don't really like Eve of the Daleks. It's disappointing because I think Resolution and Revolution of the Daleks are two of Jodie's best stories. Like, the Daleks, I thought Chris Chibnall was actually doing a pretty good job. When he wasn't doing a very good job of just his general stories, he was doing a decent job of the Daleks. But in Eve of the Daleks, no. It's just a Groundhog Day episode with Daleks, and I just find it quite boring. And then Legend of the Sea Devils isn't really any better. The hype around having the Sea Devils back was big, and it just turned out to be quite boring and bland, and it's just not really a fan. I don't have Power of the Doctor on DVD yet, so that is the end of that. Then we get on to some kind of extra bits. So we've got Doctor Who and the Daleks, the 1960s movie. I haven't watched this yet. Same goes for Invasion of Earth, Dalek Invasion of Earth 2150 AD. I haven't watched either of these yet, but I saw them a few weeks ago, and I had to buy them because I hadn't seen them and hadn't got them yet, so I have them here now. We've got The Ultimate Guy, which is just a kind of documentary thing on, I believe, the 50th anniversary, so that's pretty cool. Stuck to that one. K9 and Company, which is kind of it's the pilot for this show that never ended up happening with Sarah Jane and K9. Of course, in the new series, it would kind of end up being Sarah Jane Adventures, but yeah, this was back in the 80s, 90s, and it didn't really go ahead, and I haven't actually watched this yet, but I've got to get around to that. And then I will just briefly go through Torchwood, since it is Doctor Who related. So Torchwood Series 1 is pretty good. It's a little bit... Well, it's definitely made for more adult audiences compared to Doctor Who, especially Series 1, especially episode... Is it episode 1 or... I think it's episode 2 that's the weird one. You'll know what I mean if you've seen Torchwood. Yeah, it's a bit much, Series 1, but it's good. Series 2, for me, is the better series as a whole. When you consider, there's 4 series of Torchwood, but only 2 that are really like your standard sort of, each episode's different. So Series 2, for me, is the better of those 2 series. Because then you've got Children of Earth, which is kind of a series-long arc of one story, but it is really good. Children of Earth is amazing. It's creepy. It's just terrifying and really well done. And then you've got Miracle Day, which is okay. It's very Americanized. It's all set in America, and it's good, but it doesn't quite feel like Torchwood to me. It just feels like an American sci-fi crime show, but it's still enjoyable. It does go on for a bit long, though. And that is it. The only other things I've got is Carnival of Monsters. That's a standard edition, and also the 5 Doctors, like the original release as well, which I think was the first ever Doctor Who DVD ever. So I've got those 2. But other than that, yeah, nothing else up here is really Doctor Who related. And then everything down here is also not Doctor Who related. That's a mix of mine and my partner's DVDs of other things. But yeah, that is it for this Doctor Who DVD collection for 2023. Finally got around to doing this, so I hope you guys enjoyed Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.